A billion-dollar boost to school food programs. That's the latest promise from the feds as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau continues his pre-budget tour. The Liberals have long promised a school food program, and today's announcement details a commitment coming in this month's budget to provide food in schools to an additional 400,000 kids. But the rollout can't happen without the help from Canada's provinces. Here to talk about that is Treasury Board President Anita Anand. Minister Anand, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I wanted to start with this announcement today. Give us an idea of who you hope will benefit most from this national school food program.
400,000 children who are going to benefit from this national school food program. $1 billion. This is a game changer. We've heard from advocates across the country that there needed to be a supplement to existing programs in provinces. All G7 countries have them except us. Now we join that group. We are going to be able to have this national program for kids so that they get a fair and equal start at life in terms of having the food they need to learn and be educated and participate fully in school.
You mentioned that there are already programs that exist in a number of provinces and territories. Federal stats show that those programs only reach about 21% of school-age children. How is this going to be different? I know 400,000 more, but how do we ensure that this gets to more kids, benefits more people, and really gets to the kids that need it the most?
Advocates have been asking for a national program so that we can have more consistency across the country. It really is going to be incumbent upon provincial governments as well to ensure that this federal money gets placed into the necessary areas so that that 400,000 number can be reached.
How do you do that? Because the discussions with provinces, this is their jurisdiction. It's an education. How do you make sure that it goes to the right places?
We've shown that we can do that and work with provinces. $10 a day childcare, for example, the healthcare transfers, another example. So we're going to build on those strong working relationships with provinces to roll out this additional food program. It is important, it's crucial so that kids can have the food they need to be nourished and to learn.
Minister Freeland said she wants this in place by the fall of this coming up school year, 24-25. With all of the negotiations that still have to happen with the provinces and territories, is that realistic?
Again, we have been working well with the provinces in terms of making sure benefits get delivered to Canadians across the board. This is an area of need, just like in the areas that we announced last week, rental supports for Canadians so that they're on equal supports with those who want to own a home, supports for early childhood educators, and more infrastructure for childhood learning. That is part of the priority. Gen X and millennials are saying that they need these supports, and that's exactly what our government will deliver.
I take your point on the negotiations with the provinces and the experience that you guys have had. One of the places that it's not going so well is on carbon pricing. And in fact, we had the Liberal Premier, Andrew Furey, calling for an emergency meeting of leaders across the country to talk about it and propose solutions. Do you think that would benefit not only the Prime Minister and his discussion around it, but discussion in this country around carbon pricing, to have all of the premiers and the Prime Minister sit down in one room and really hash this out?
Well, first of all, let's be clear that 8 out of 10 families are getting more money back in their pockets than they're paying in the carbon or the price on pollution. So that is a very important starting point. In addition, the Prime Minister has said, by all means, if the premiers have additional ideas, that he is more than willing to consider them. And I know that this being an existential threat in terms of environmental sustainability, all ideas should be considered. But by the same token, we did hear from a group of economists last week that this is the most efficient and effective way to address environmental sustainability and climate change. And so we are going to continue putting money back in the pockets of Canadians with the carbon rebate while ensuring that we are there for them with a number of other supports. Today is an example, the food program on a national basis, rental supports for Canadians, and more spaces for early childhood education and learning. That's the type of government we are, Mike. We are making sure that we are there for Canadians, especially vulnerable Canadians, especially in this economic time.
So I'm curious, why not just sit down and really sort of talk it out in the room? The Prime Minister has even challenged some of the premiers, saying if you've got a better idea, then come to the table with it. So why not create that venue and have a table?
Well, let's be clear that it is important to continue to address climate change. We have a target of net zero by 2050. We ran and were elected twice on our environmental sustainability platform, and we make sure that we are there for Canadians, especially in this time of economic need. So there are a number of issues on the table to be addressed. Climate change is one of them, but certainly rental supports, a national school food program, as well as infrastructure for early childhood education. All of that is going to be in budget 2024, but we have much work to do across the board on these issues.
And all I'm saying is it sounds like it could be a good venue for a conversation, but I'm not going to continue to press you on it. Not that I get anything out of having a meeting either. I wanted to look ahead to the budget, as you just mentioned. At the end of last month, you said that your government would repurpose $10.5 billion over the next 3 years from 69 departments and agencies and crown corporations. How much spending room does that leave you in this budget?
So what I said in terms of the Refocused Government Spending Initiative is that over 5 years, we will ensure that we reallocate $15.8 billion and then $4.8 billion every year thereafter. That's the first spending review that our government has undertaken, and we are well on our way to reaching those targets, including ensuring that we are redirecting those funds to our government's priorities. So that's the exercise, and we're going to have a phase 2 of that exercise, which was foreshadowed in the fall economic statement, Mike, but make no mistake, all of the organizations and ministers involved were very enthusiastic about the need to ensure that we are not unnecessarily spending on things like professional services contracts or on executive travel.
And some of those sort of savings are coming out of national defense, the department that you just came out of. And with the 75th anniversary of NATO upcoming, we've had the U.S. ambassador to NATO singling out Canada on this program, saying that Canada is the only member of the alliance without a plan to get to the 2% target of GDP on defense spending. How do you balance that, the domestic issues that you have in terms of spending, with the international pressures from our allies to get to that 2% goal?
Well, we will continue to ensure that our defense spending is increasing, as we are doing under Strong, Secure, Engaged by 70% beginning in 2017 through to 2026. In addition, you've seen us announce major investments into various capabilities. The F-35s are one example. Making sure we have drone capability is another. And we, of course, have other procurements in tow. In addition, we need to make sure that we are there to reinforce the basic necessities of the Canadian Armed Forces, which is why in the supplementary estimates prior to the holidays, we announced additional supports for the cost of living for the Canadian Armed Forces. And I will say that the Conservatives voted against those supports. They also voted against supports for Operation Unifier. That is our operation for Ukraine. So there is a lot to be said here, but make no mistake, our defense spending is increasing, and we take our NATO obligations as a founding member of NATO extremely seriously.
But allies want a timeline, and Canada is the only country in the alliance that hasn't given a timeline. Why
I know
is
that Minister Blair in the DPU, the Defense Policy Update, is working extremely hard on this, and we are all aligned that we will continue to do our part as a founding member of NATO to ensure that we are there for this multilateral alliance.
As someone who has their hands on the purse strings of the government, can you say when Canada will be able to either provide a timeline or a date to when we will spend 2% of GDP on defense?
Well, let's be clear. Our defense spending is increasing, and at the
not to
same
2%
time,
of GDP. That's the key marker, right?
At the same time, we need to make sure that we can get money out the door. So that means it's incumbent upon national defense to ensure that the procurements which have been funded are getting out the door. That is crucial. In addition, we will work on this defense policy update, as I know Minister Blair is doing, to ensure that we have the vision going forward to ensure that once that money is in place, it can be spent efficiently. What capabilities are needed and when is exactly what Minister Blair is looking at.
Okay, and we'll look forward to that. Treasury Board President Anita Anand, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate this.
Thank you, Mike.